Hello guys, you're listening to Ebird Online and I'm back with another review. And today I'm going to be giving you a lesson in pick your battles. Yes, that's right, I'm going to be talking about the wedding of Brandon and Julia. Just before I begin, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're enjoying my content thus far. And also don't forget to click the notification bell if you don't want to miss any videos. So without further ado, I give you Brandon and Julia. So a couple of episodes ago, Brandon broke somewhat of a taboo because he decided to go along with Julia to look at wedding dresses. And on social media, many people said it was a bad omen because of course seeing the bride in her dress before you get to the altar is bad luck. But as far as I'm concerned, not as much bad luck as it is getting married to Brandon in the first place. And so when Julia was trying on these dresses, Brandon sat there looking entirely bored. And I worked out very quickly that Brandon is to wedding dresses what Julia is to feeding fluffy little animals daily on the farm. So Betty was there as well, and Betty was very enthusiastic about different dresses, and I've got to say, Julia's got an amazing figure, so every dress she tried on looked really good. But she kept on asking Brandon, which one do you prefer? Which one do you prefer? And Brandon said, quite rightly, they all look nice, whichever one you prefer. And for some reason, Julia took this whole level of disinterest as some sort of reason why Brandon didn't want to get married, and she was very angry with him. But as far as I'm concerned, Julia, sometimes you've got to realise some people just have no interest in certain things. Brandon is not into wedding dresses. He couldn't really care less. He doesn't differentiate between one long white lacy dress and another long white lacy dress. And it was the same exact thing when they went to see churches. All four of them went to see a church, and Julia was really excited and she thought, great, this is the venue. Brandon, get excited. Again, she got crickets. He doesn't differentiate between one church and another. And his argument was, I'm not into weddings. I'm not into this whole thing. I want to marry you. And I know that it is your bag, so I'm very happy to go along with whatever you want and whatever you say. And so really, I had two thoughts about this. Firstly, Julia, one of the most important things about married life or being in any relationship is knowing when to pick your battles. I'm extremely sure that Brandon is not the first person to be underwhelmed by the whys and wherefores of his wedding. And Julia's moaning because she has to do loads of work. But let's look at it this way. Julia, you've opted out of feeding the fluffy little animals. You've opted out of doing farm work. Meanwhile, Brandon works full time, so you have at least 40 hours per week, more than he does, to consider the dress, the flowers, the venue, etc. So whilst I think he is being a little bit irritating by saying, I don't care, he may as well just say, yes, I love this one, yes, I love that, without actually caring. At least he's being truthful. He's just saying, Julia, you can have a free decision on this. And Julia, you've got the time to consider looking at bridal magazines and looking on the internet and working out exactly what you want. And I thought, case closed. But directly after this thought, I had another thought about Brandon, and this is slightly more worrying. And that is, in the midst of him not worrying about one long white lacy dress and another long white lacy dress, and not worrying about one church and another church, or one bunch of flowers and another bunch of flowers, and that is, will he differentiate between one fit girl from Russia and another fit girl from Russia? Is Brandon really into this? Or does Brandon just want to complete his little family with a wife and slot her into his pre-existing life? Is Julia swappable or interchangeable? And on that, I guess time will tell, but it's something to think about. And so this week, when we're starting the episode, Brandon and Julia are very quickly trying to put together their makeshift wedding. So as you guys know, because of coronavirus, they couldn't go ahead with the original wedding on the original date, which was the 9th of May. And no, Brandon, I haven't forgot the fact that you pretended not to know why that date was. We all know that you know. Even I bloody know. Slightly sketchy. But unfortunately, these guys have got to bring that date forward and just put something together themselves. So Julia has to run into town and grab her own wedding dress. And when we catch up with them, they're sitting outside on the veranda, and Julia's putting together a posy of flowers. And Brandon's come outside to see if she's okay because they had a big argument last night, so he kind of wants to talk about that. And he's sitting there holding the flowers as she's cutting stems and adding to the posy. And she suddenly flips her lid and says, Brandon, hold the flowers with two hands, of course. Oh my God. Oh Lord, poor Brandon. Even if I'd have been sitting there, I would have just been holding with one hand. Julia, there's some things that some people simply don't know. They're not just being awkward. And then Brandon asked Julia, do you still want to get married? You seem so angry. And she looked at him and said, I'm angry and I'm sad. You need to try to make me want to marry you. You don't care about giving me nice words. You don't seem to care about anything to do with this wedding. I do want to get married, but maybe I'll just marry you and then we'll get a divorce. And Brandon said, unsurprisingly, are you threatening me with divorce before we get married? And she said, well, if we get married, you might just think, Julia's just here now anyway. I don't need to say sweet words to her. I don't need to give her flowers. I don't need to be nice to her. She's my wife now. Oh, Julia, you have to consider one thing. Brandon has almost bankrupted himself, paying £10,000 worth of holidays for you and fees for the K1 visa. He works 40 to 60 hours a week, of course including the work on the farm, whilst you sit at home. And he did back you up when you said you didn't want to work on the farm for free. He's paying in entirety for this wedding. And I know it's now a budget wedding, but that's out of his control. If it was the original wedding, he'd be paying for that original wedding, which is no mean feat. So I think you have to look overall at what Brandon is when you're considering if he loves you. Love isn't all sweet words and bringing flowers, and in fact, Julia, those are the cheap things. Listen not to what he says, but watch what he does. But having said that, Brandon, it's absolutely free to pretend to be interested. It won't cost you anything to stop shrugging your shoulders at Julia's every question. And Brandon kisses her and tells her he loves her, and she said, I love you too. And then Brandon speaks to production, and he said, I think she's acting irrationally, but I do love her and I do want to marry her. And I don't think she's acting massively irrationally. You are very laissez-faire about this wedding, but having said that, from what I've seen, and I come from a family full of men, they can tend to be laissez-faire about weddings. I don't know if I'm right in saying this, or if we should just accept this, but it's very often kind of true. And then Brandon tells Julia, you look so cute, and it melts Julia's heart, and she starts crying and saying, I love it when you say words like this. Oh, Julia, if this is all Brandon's got to do, he's going to have a very, very easy marriage, and you're going to very quickly learn that when he pisses you off massively, and then all he has to do is say a few kind words afterwards, it doesn't adequately paper over the cracks. Julia has yet to learn, pick your battles and your arguments, and learn to read what's in front of you. And then later on, it did make me laugh. Brandon put together a secret spa for Julia. And he switched all the lights off and said, come on, come through, see what I've got. And he opened the door to a slightly dirty bathroom with a bath fully filled with bubbles. And he said, welcome to the spa. Julia loved it. Oh, Lord. And I guess it was a cute gesture, and Julia really liked it because it showed that Brandon was finally putting a little bit of thought in. Oh dear, how easily some people are pleased. And so the next time we see this couple, it's the big day of the wedding. And Julia explains that she bought her dress from a store and her shoes, and it's not what she wanted for her wedding, but she's making the best of it. And then we cut to Betty and Ron. And gosh, and I knew Betty would be somewhat of a mess today, but she's really sort of stating her intentions for the future when she says, I'm really excited for the big day, but we've been a tight little family for so long. No matter what happens, no matter who comes along, Brandon will always be my baby. And she says it in a really territorial manner, and I think that doesn't bode well for the future for Julia, but I guess we'll just see. And Ron was sitting there, and Ron said, you've still got me. And she barely even lifted an interested eyebrow his way. So for some reason, Julia's insisting on them saying their vows in each other's language. And Brandon's sitting on his bed in his suit with his dicky bow, writing out his vows in Russian. Oh Lord, rather you than me, Brandon, rather you than me. If I were you, Julia, I'd write this wedding off as, virtually just a ceremony, and then just plan a proper big wedding, maybe in Russia or maybe in America, after coronavirus finishes. But you can tell that Julia has dreamed about this big day her whole life, and she feels robbed of the opportunity to have this big, elaborate wedding. And guys, I'm finally starting to learn to speak Brandon, or should I say, to learn to understand Brandon speak. As he was sitting on his bed, writing out these vows in Russian, he said, Julia thinks it's incredibly personal, and I've started to notice now, whenever he doesn't really agree with something or doesn't want to do it, he says, Julia thinks it would be incredibly personal, i.e., I don't agree with this whole shit for 1 second, but I'm going along with it anyway. And it does somewhat make me laugh. And so these guys have to drive themselves to the church. And when they get to the church and Julia walks down the aisle, I have to say she does look absolutely gorgeous. I wasn't too keen on the flowers earlier, but they do look really good however she's put them together. And they get to the altar and Betty and Ron are busy doing all of the filming. And then Julia's mum and dad are watching the wedding via Skype. And so they go to say their vows, and obviously Brandon's are in Russian, and Julia says this is her favourite moment, and I've got to admit, her parents do look really happy that he seems to be saying them in Russian as well, and it was quite a nice touch. And in his vows, Brandon told Julia, you're now my priority. And I start to realise, Julia, you've done a sneaky one. You did this on purpose so that Betty doesn't have to hear how now you're his number one. You're his priority and he loves you above all others. All of this is true, but yet Betty still doesn't know. Oh, Betty's in the congregation smiling away. If only you knew what was being said. No, guys, I'm joking. It was a really nice ceremony. And it brought a tear even to Grandad's eye. After the ceremony, they all speak to Julia's mum and dad. And Julia's mum's crying and she said to Brandon, I love you. And Dad Ron said, we've got a new member of the family. But what I most like to say about this day was that Betty looked genuinely happy and genuinely, in fact, absolutely thrilled that Brandon was happy. And the truth be told, I think Brandon got lucky. Julia looked absolutely stunning, even though she did her own makeup and whatever. She looked really, really good. I wasn't a fan of the short dress, but hey ho, she looked phenomenal. And that's where we leave proceedings for today. So guys, what do you think the prognosis for the future is? I think that Brandon and Julia are very well suited. I know an awful lot of you guys think Brandon's a child, he's never going to mature. And whilst I agree that he is very young for his age, I think Brandon's like a 23-year-old at the age of 27. I just think he's a bit behind. I don't think that he can't mature and can't learn things. And we saw evidence of this with this very episode. As soon as he realised, okay, Julia's upset because she thinks that I'm not telling her that I love her and so on, he began doing that. And then he also put together this spa. Okay, it was a bubble bath, but she seemed to like it. If you like it, I love it. And so I think he does learn lessons and he does work out what's important to Julia and he does those things. But I think by far one of the biggest things he's done to grow up of late is to stand up to Betty and Ron in terms of Julia working on the farm and to say no, she doesn't want to do it. And if you insist upon that and us sleeping in separate rooms, we will move out. And I don't know really if he would have done, but the fact that he stood up to them on behalf of himself and Julia, I think shows some progression and some growth. So I guess we'll just see if Brandon matures sufficiently to become a great husband. And as for Julia, remember, pick your battles. Do not sweat the small stuff, sometimes it just ain't worth it. So guys, let me know what you think in comments down below. And I'll be back very soon with another video. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to smash the like button. It really does make a difference for my analytics. You've been listening to Ebird Online, and I bid you good day.